It has been 2 weeks, but we did not forget about you. This is Season 2, Episode 10 of the weekly Quantum World Detangled. With my friends.
Hey, it's always either Episode 9 or 10, no matter what we do. My name's Denise Ruffner. I'm VP of Business Development for INQ out of Maryland, but I live in Southern California where it's nice and warm. I'm happy to see everyone out there. On to my friend Tommaso.
Hello everyone, good morning. Tommaso De Maria, CEO of Entropic Labs, calling you from Singapore. We are in the middle of monsoon season, so it's almost cold. Well, let's not exaggerate, almost cold here. Today a beautiful day, it's gonna rain for sure this afternoon. And after the weather forecast in Singapore, today we have Kosta Vilk joining us as a guest. Kosta, to you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Kosta Vilk. I am Chief Technology Officer for QSecure, where we're focused on securing network traffic and securing communications.
Welcome, Kosta, to our little show, and I just want to confirm this is Episode 10. Give us a minute or so of your personal background so we can get to know you. You're from Australia, you live in the Bay Area, you've had a bunch of different startups all around security. Give us, Kosta, in 60 seconds or so, the personal side.
Absolutely. So yes, I did grow up in Australia and went to Monash and then moved to the heart of Silicon Valley and to really start up my career and develop things. You've probably walked past some of my products in airports and hotels from my earlier days. I've built security software for with the U.S. Navy and have had a couple of exits and spent the last decade as a chief information security officer or chief technology officer in financial services. I wanted to do something relaxing.
That sounds very relaxing, but with the success, the R&R comes. So would you consider yourself a serial founder, or is entrepreneurship and the business side of things still something that you're learning as you go?
I feel like it runs in my blood. I opened up my first company when I was about 18, and that was making jewelry back in the day. I worked as a jeweler from the age of about 11 till I was 22.
What kind of jewelry? What would you categorize it as, a certain style, or?
I've worked with in a bunch of different styles. I had gallery exhibitions when I was 18, 19, which is why I started my first company ever. And then I became very interested in tech, and I found it fascinating. So I changed careers, went into product development and software development and networks, and became fascinated in security and cybersecurity because I have a protective nature, and then of course quantum is the next evolution of it. It's that is a truly fascinating area, way beyond anything you see in cybersecurity. So that's the next evolution.
And you're the co-founder and CTO of QSecure, but I think you're also the partner in a seed investment fund, Gimel. Is that true? Can you tell us a little bit more about that investment activity?
That's correct. A friend of mine and I started that fund quite a few years ago. Right now, I don't have a truly active role in it. I act more as an advisor and a mentor to help some companies. The fund itself is focused on startups with new and emerging technologies. We like to help them build new, interesting things. So it's been a bit of a passion, but I like to build my own too.
A fascinating journey from jewelry and Australia over security and investing into the Bay Area. Your website says you're a team of dreamers and overachievers. So let's get to know QSecure a little better with Denise.
Thanks, Andre. I'm kind of stuck on jewelry, but I'm going to force myself to move on. That's a conversation for another time. Really interested in QSecure. Now I have to learn how to say that quickly. But one of the things I've worked for a company dealing in quantum security in the past. And one of my questions to you is, where are you finding traction, customer traction, like particular industries, particular areas?
Absolutely. So the biggest interest that we're seeing right now are from a few different verticals. The military are big proponents. There is a big government push to build out our quantum industry in general. There's a lot of focus on new standards that are being developed, new technologies, new communication methods that all leverage quantum. And it's definitely seen as a critical area to world security, not just national security in the US. We're also getting a lot of interest from financial services, where they need to protect data, they need to protect assets in vast quantities. Communications and ISPs, telecommunications is another big area. Innovation labs within those organizations especially have been tremendous supporters of these technologies. And of course, I should mention SaaS and SaaS companies in general. They the way they handle information, the way they build trust as their cornerstone, how they view their role with their clients has been a big driving force for their innovation and our partnerships there specifically.
And one of my questions is, are people waiting for standards, or are they starting to move forward in quantum security in the absence of published standards?
So I'm glad that you bring it up. NIST and ISO and ETSI are all standards bodies, and they've been working in these areas for years and years now. As a matter of fact, I believe that the new sets of standards are coming out within the next few years that will update what we consider to be military-grade encryption. So as these new standards roll out, especially for cryptography, it's going to be a little bit of a scramble for the industry, as the industry will need to understand what these new quantum resilient algorithms do, how they work, what they break, what they help, and we're on the forefront of working on that. We're actually working with NIST's NCCOE group specifically on developing those standards, and we're partnering with the switch manufacturers and traditional network communications companies to help them build and develop.
That's interesting. I think it's always hard to kind of be early into a field and kind of create a market. So I imagine that must be a little bit of a challenge to be on the forefront ahead of standards and trying to interest customers in adopting or in starting to think about quantum.
Normally that would definitely be the case. What I'm actually finding is that a lot of the large enterprise customers have innovation labs that are very curious about these new technologies. They're actually trying to learn, understand them, and see how they will impact them specifically, and what would be the role of these technologies within their next evolution of their own products. So it's been an interesting journey. As a matter of fact, I've never actually seen responses within the industry quite the way I see them now. It's been the interest has been quite overwhelming, actually.
Wow, that's great. That's great to hear. Wow, I'm impressed. I'm going to hand it over to Tommaso. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it will be very useful also for the people who are listening to understand a bit more about the technology of QSecure. the way I understand it, or my assumption is that you folks are mostly working with classical technologies in the sense that there is a quantum threat to cryptography, and you might be either developing or looking at how to apply what you just mentioned, quantum resistant algorithms, and protect information, either transfer of information or encryption. Is that a fair assumption, or is there something more to the technology that you're using and developing in the company?
Sure. So the first point that you were making is that you're right. It is a classical technology, but the reason why it's called post-quantum.
And they just say one thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's very funny how in the industry everyone gets very edgy when you say, "Oh, we're using classical technologies." I know, but yeah, of course, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, no, there isn't. And what makes it interesting is that post-quantum cryptography, even though the name is post-quantum, it really is a classical technology in the sense that these are algorithms that run on current generation of computers and will run on future generations of computers as well. What makes them post-quantum specifically is that they're designed algorithmically to be resilient to threats posed by quantum computers. They're also designed to be resilient to threats that we see right now in the industry that are effective against classical computers. So as, the cryptography that we use right now, a lot of it has been around for the last 30, 40, 50 years. Both in variants of their implementation, but also in the algorithms themselves. They've been great algorithms and they've stood the test of time, but now our compute power has out-evolved and new methods have been developed. So we really need to stay ahead of that as an industry. So when you're looking at a bank protecting your personal assets, you really want them to be moving towards a new technology that's resilient to quantum machines and the threat of posed by quantum computers. But that's not all that we do. We also focus on quantum random number generation, which is QRNG, and quantum key distribution, which is quantum cryptographic keys that work on fiber and free space optical channels. To really secure communication at its base layer. And it becomes, so what we do is we actually integrate those quantum technologies, true quantum technologies, into our product stack. So we're not only classical, we actually do use quantum technologies within our offering. And we're also developing quantum machine learning technologies to combat threats posed by attackers and bad actors. So that quantum machine learning is there for attack detection and threat response.
Thanks for sharing. And since you mentioned quantum random number generators, so I'll ask a question that I know many people would like to ask, but they usually don't, because I guess they feel a little uncomfortable with it. So what would you say are quantum random number generators useful for? Like, what applications do you foresee for that specific piece of technology, so that we can start also making all the discussions that we have a bit more practical for the listeners?
Of course. So this is so random numbers are very important to cryptography as a whole. Cryptography is the way we protect everything we do. Our very conversation right now is encrypted, and the core of encryption technologies is actually being able to generate the codes, the keys themselves, to be able to encrypt and decrypt the data. So this is where 80% of our internet traffic is based on PKI. That's public certificates and private certificates. When you look at the top of your web browser and you see a lock or a green lock symbol, it means that your connection is secured and private. And that's based on the random numbers that are generated by CPUs that are used in servers, computers, laptops, cell phones, anything we touch, anything we use. So You may have seen news articles lately about manufacturers like Intel and AMD and others being susceptible to attacks called cryptanalysis. It's a new family of attacks, or relatively new family of attacks, where someone can actually predict the random number being generated. If they can predict the random number generated, they can actually use it to break the certificates and really brute force. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but in summary, it is possible. And that's why Intel has been getting into trouble with it, but there are exactly the same style of attacks available for AMD and other microchip architectures. And that's because the way we generate those numbers is called pseudo-random number generation. It approximates true random numbers, but they're not true random numbers in themselves, which opens them up to that kind of study. When you look at quantum random number generation, they use quantum technologies to develop those random numbers because of the way they study the quantum particles and how they're actually created, and then use that process to generate the random numbers themselves, which creates a process that's unpredictable by cryptanalysis and much more resilient to attacks, both classical and quantum.
Thank you. This really interesting, actually. Last question, if I still got a little bit of time, if you don't mind. Where do you think the quantum internet is going to fit into the picture that we are describing? So now we are talking about classical channels, classical information being moved between nodes, and quantum computers that could threaten breaking these channels and steal information from it. What I think is very interesting, especially at a time where we are transitioning, well, now to 5G and later to other G technologies in terms of classical information communication. Where is quantum communication going to fit into that? Meaning quantum communication at large scale and not just limited to small networks as it exists today. I guess another way to ask the same question is, where does that technology fit into the vision of QuSecure?
Absolutely. So we sit at on the network itself. So we manage communications, both internal and out to the internet, out to the cloud. The way we look at it is, as technology progresses to 5G for wireless communications, more fiber, more data being pushed. I mean, last year we've been able to generate a yottabyte worth of data globally in just one single year. So the vastness of that information that's being created, generated, communicated is already stupendous, but it still continues to grow, and it feels like it's almost growing exponentially. So new tech has to evolve to do that, not just to push more data, but also to secure it. So, because right now an attacker can sit and pick up that data traffic, analyze it. They have more compute power available to them. And that's not only true of nation state actors, but also but it's also true of general bad actors that are out to either do damage or appropriate something that they shouldn't be appropriating. So where quantum technologies really come in is with quantum key distribution type of products. You can actually secure vast networks. You can secure dark fiber. And I believe that Verizon and Toshiba recently did a pilot in the Washington, D.C. area, where they were able to pass video over dark fiber using quantum key distribution methods. It's a much more secure method. It's virtually impervious to attacks, both direct and side channel, and they can move much more data much faster than ever before. So this quantum internet is at the core level of how we communicate is definitely a new and emerging technology and we'll see more of it. But we do the same thing with satellites, with ground-to-air communication, or ground-to-ground, or even communication between satellites. Anything that should be protected at its core level, at the source, really should be.
Thank you. I'll pass it to André.
Very interesting topic, and today I have 13 questions because neither Denise or Tommaso asked the most important question. How do you come up with a new password for, say, you sign up for a bank account, and how do you make sure you remember it? Any practical tips?
Well, so it's not a question of a password. It's a question of multi-factor authentication. And because passwords themselves are very easily to break these days. Back in the day, we used to recommend 8-character passwords, and we recommended 12-character passwords. Then some organization went to 15. And it's all based on a logarithmic formula of what it's going to take to break that password. You can break a 15-character password with good use of a GPU farm now. In about 6 days, if I remember correctly. But if you use multi-factor authentication, and more specifically not text-based multi-factor, but push style, where you get a message in your phone and you click on approve button and you scan your biometric credentials, that's the right way to go. And please don't recycle your passwords. Once they leak everywhere. And they don't leak from you; they leak from the many breaches that happen within the industry.
There are websites where you can buy those passwords, I believe, right? And they just try them all. Thank you for those tips. We have 12 questions now, our famous Marshall Bruce quantum questionnaire. And these, there's not about right or wrong. We're trying to get a little bit more of who Kosta is. So rapid answers, one word to one sentence. Otherwise, we'll nudge you on to the next. So if you're ready, we'll start with the first one.
Go ahead.
What would you consider the principal aspect of your personality?
Fun. And fun and hard work, I would say. Lots of hard work and lots of fun.
The quality that you desire most in an entrepreneur?
Willingness to listen.
What is your best virtue?
Keeping the chair warm. I keep a chair warm like a champion.
What is your principal flaw?
That's a tough one. I have many. So just ask my wife. She will tell you all about them gladly and at length. Possibly I talk too much.
Goes with keeping the chair warm, right? What do you appreciate most about working in quantum?
Oh, it's such a wonderful industry. I mean, everyone we've ever worked with. I mean, Tommaso and I have actually communicated in the past, and he's actually recommended us to CDL, and they've been tremendous to work with. Just the entire industry is so warm. Denise and I have spoken in the past also, and it's a warm industry. It's very accepting. It's very friendly. It's growing rapidly. And there is a lot of interest. It's I've actually never felt quite so alive at work as I do now. I really enjoy it.
That's great to hear. If not a quantum entrepreneur, and we heard that you started out in jewelry, but what else would you be doing right now?
I really am passionate about cybersecurity. It's been my passion for about a decade and a half, 2 decades almost, and I like making the world a little bit safer, trying to make it a little bit better. So if I weren't working on quantum intersection with cybersecurity, I would still be working on cybersecurity.
Who is your favorite scientist?
Oh, Marie Curie.
Your favorite entrepreneur?
Actually, my current business partners. Warm team. I really enjoy working with them.
This is a question about quantum computing and quantum computing hardware, but let's see if you have a perspective on it. Do you have a favorite quantum computing modality? Superconducting, trapped ions, photonics?
You know, I've been quite partial to photonics, especially if you can get them on a CMOS chip. If you can scale them down, they work at room temperature. They seem to be quite effective, and they seem to show a lot of promise for general quantum computing.
Your quantum dream?
Ooh, nice. Well, I mean, I'm working on my quantum dream of trying to make the world a little bit safer and a little bit better. I would love to see material sciences play a role in. I would love to see quantum computing be used for material sciences, and I'd love to see how you can create new things, new medicines, new materials, new manufacturing processes to make us a little bit cleaner, a little bit better, a little bit, and have that quantum-based machine learning really go through and crunch the numbers that we're not able to do right now.
Dream big. The opposite. What's your quantum nightmare?
Quantum nightmare. Us not being ready when our adversaries get their hands on quantum machines, especially ones that are optimized to break cryptography.
Imagine we get there, photonics or any other modality. Tomorrow you wake up, you have the most fault-tolerant universal quantum computer in your living room. Who are you going to give it to?
My kids, see what they can learn.
It's about the next generation. Kosta, thank you so much for these answers. I'll be counting zeros to figure out how much is an iota byte later tonight. Never thought that big. This concludes Season 2, Episode 10 of the Weekly Quantum World Detangled. We have our sponsors to thank, Denise Rothmer and IonQ, Tommaso De Marie and Entropica Labs from Singapore, as well as Cambridge Quantum Computing. This is Season 2, Episode 10. Going to repeat it so you believe me. And you are now detangled.